In the dimming light of a late afternoon, Marco stood at the edge of a run-down group home, an unwanted remnant of neglected dreams and silent cries. The air around him felt thick with the essence of abandonment, mirroring the heaviness in his heart. He often wandered through the halls, feeling invisible among the joys of other children who raced through the rooms, their laughter echoing like distant music he could never join. To Marco, the peeling paint on the walls mirrored his own bruised spirit, a testament to a lifetime spent on the fringes of existence. Within the confines of this home, he crafted daydreams of warmth and acceptance, envisioning a sanctuary that could finally hold him close, far away from the gnawing loneliness that clung to him like a shadow. It was during one of these moments of refuge, as sunlight filtered through grimy windows, that the course of his life began to shift. A plain envelope landed on the floor beside him, unexpected and unassuming, but harboring news that would alter everything. As he opened it, his heart raced with a mix of hope and disbelief. He had inherited $500, a small fortune that contained the potential for transformation. For most, this amount might seem trivial, barely enough to purchase a meal, but for Marco, it flickered like a beacon of promise, a chance to own a piece of the world. The old dilapidated house on the outskirts of town emerged vividly in his mind, worn down but alive with possibility, whispering secrets of a future yet unwritten. In that moment, the prospect of taking ownership filled him with unbridled enthusiasm. It meant exchangeable freedom from the neglected walls of the group home, a refuge where laughter and light could flourish. He signed the papers, partially believing that he could finally shape the life he had always longed for. The sun rose on a new day, illuminating the empty rooms of his new abode. Marco stepped inside, the cool air brushing against him, a stark contrast to the warmth he imagined filling the spaces. Dust floated like tiny orbs in the sunlight, each particle shimmering with hope as his broom pushed them aside, uncovering remnants of a past life. With every sweep, Marco felt a sense of renewal, brushing away layers of neglect and the loneliness that had cocooned him for so long. It was while he cleaned that he noticed something unusual, a loose floorboard in the corner of the living room. Heart racing with a mix of trepidation and intrigue, he pried it open and discovered a hidden compartment. Inside lay a collection of old photographs, scattered letters soaked in emotion, and a dusty journal with a cover worn by time. As he held it, a spark ignited within him, sensing that each object spoke of stories untold. The journal's pages seemed to whisper, reaching out to him, inviting him to delve into the words that would unveil a connection he never knew existed. With each turn of the page, he would uncover more than just the history of a house. He would begin to understand the fragments of himself that had eluded him all his life. If you feel this same ache in your heart, consider liking and subscribing, as someone else might need to hear Marco's story today. As the days slipped by in Marco's new home, the dusty corners began to glow with life and possibility, much like his own spirit. Each time he opened the journal, his heart raced with discovery. The words within captured the essence of a woman he was coming to know, his mother. Her voice emerged from the ink, filled with love, longing, and an overwhelming sense of loss, revealing a world of dreams that had flickered out before she could fully realize them. Sentences full of hope threaded through the narratives of pain, and Marco learned of her fierce love for him, crafted through the hours spent yearning for his presence. Her entries expressed relentless determination, recounting how she had wanted to shield him from a world that had proved too cruel. Each page resonated with moments of fragility, the ink smudged from tears, weaving together stories of her childhood, tales of abandonment, and of searching for the happiness she had seldom found. Marco felt the ache of her experiences, each shared secret creating a bridge between their souls. A quiet melody of shared grief played in the air as her words wrapped around him like a comforting blanket, softer than he had anticipated. He often found himself drifting into memories of his own lonely past, reflecting on the echoes of a life spent in an orphanage, living on the whims of temporary homes, and facing rejection far too often. Indicative of his struggle, he could almost picture the faded walls of his former room, the loneliness that crept in at night, filling the silence with unanswered questions. Those walls had shut him off from connection, reinforcing the belief that he was unworthy of love. But now, as he read her journal, he felt that familiar sense of fear beginning to unravel. Her strength seeped into him, igniting a flicker of hope he thought long extinguished. Summer turned to fall, and Marco threw himself into improving the house. Each brushstroke painted a canvas of color against muted walls filled with memories of sorrow. He invited his friends from the group home, gathering around to fix and revive. Laughter replaced silence as they worked together, breathing life back into the forlorn structure. The sounds of hammers and playful banter replaced the ghostly quiet, stitching joy into the fabric of his home. This was something Marco had never experienced: connection, community, a sense of belonging that was being built layer by layer. In the midst of restoration, his exploration continued. One day, as he rummaged through the attic, he stumbled upon a neglected trunk, its lid cloaked in dust. Heart racing, he opened it, revealing a treasure trove of trinkets and letters. They beckoned to him, remnants of a life most likely discarded in haste, yet full of stories waiting to be told. Among the items he found even more letters from his mother, overflowing with feelings and wishes directed toward him, a mix of vulnerability and strength pouring onto the pages. With each letter opened, he felt more anchored to his roots. They painted a landscape of love and desire, revealing how fiercely she wished to protect him. Her words chronicled songs of sorrow, lost dreams and aspirations that now became a part of him, illuminating a path forward. Marco realized that she had hoped to give him a future that extended beyond the shadows of their past, a future where love was abundant and dreams were pursued without fear. The realization struck him that he had never really known her life. He had only felt the absence of it. The emotions swelled within him as he faced the bittersweet truth. Her spirit lived on through those letters, infusing him with strength and igniting a passion to honor her memory in ways he was only beginning to comprehend. With newfound determination and inspiration, Marco put pen to paper to write back, a letter that bridged the gap between the past and present. He poured his spirit into it, finally addressing the mother he had never known. He included memories he wished to share, the dreams he was beginning to build, and the way her words had wrapped around him like a lifeline. The rhythm of work, restoration, and connection intertwined with the pulse of the letters steadily flowed through him. Marco felt himself change, the boy who once felt alone, now becoming a young man rooted in love and possibility. It was hard to recall moments in which despair had clung to him. The house had reshaped his very being into a vessel of hope, of community, of understanding. He recognized the wondrous pull of being connected not just to his mother's memory, but to the people also willing to journey alongside him. As autumn leaves rustled outside, cascading like they carried their own stories, Marco stood on the threshold of a future that no longer seemed out of reach. Each day blossomed into new potential, filled with the promise of a boy who was no longer escaping his past, but was building a new chapter where he could finally belong, learned from every detail penned by a mother who had loved him fiercely from afar. Marco knew that he would never forget the pain she endured, nor the lessons gifted through every written word. As he stepped into the living room, warmth radiated in the sanctuary he had fashioned, a comforting space where both his history and future intertwined. The connection had woven him into the foundations of this house, a family built not solely on blood, but on love, a reflection of the resilience they shared across time. Inhaling deeply, Marco understood that he was embarking on a journey. His mother would walk beside him eternally, guiding him even through the echoes of silence. As winter laid its chill over the town, Marco sought warmth not just from the fire, but from the growing understanding of his family's history that enveloped him like a blanket. Driven by a thirst for connection, he transformed his visits to the local library into a quest for knowledge. Each dusty tome and yellowed newspaper clippings spoke to him, revealing the lives of those who had come before him. The librarian's encouragement fueled his determination, guiding him through records that held fragments of his past. Days turned into weeks, filled with excitement as he unearthed treasures. Marriage licenses, birth certificates, and even photographs that highlighted generations of resilience. Each new find kindled something deep within him, awakening a sense of belonging he had long thought impossible. Among the collected documents, Marco discovered a tattered envelope, its edges worn with age. Despite its fragile state, it felt significant, like a link to his family's heart. Inside was a letter penned by his grandmother to his mother, written in a shaky but loving hand. As he read the heartfelt words, tears pricked the corners of Marco's eyes. The letter spoke of dreams she had for her daughter, filled with hopes of a brighter future and love that transcended the boundaries of time and space. His grandmother had faced her own battles, and through her words, Marco could sense the strength and warmth that had nourished their lineage. Encouraged by this intimate connection, Marco began to see his journey in a broader context, intertwined with the struggles and victories of those who had lived before him. He felt inspired to compile his discoveries into something tangible, a family tree that traced the roots of love and resilience handed down from one generation to the next. This tree would not only honor his mother and grandmother, but would stand as a testament to a family that persevered amid their difficulties. With fresh resolve, Marco returned to the library to dive deeper into records that would flesh out this lineage. As he gathered names and dates, he envisioned the family gathering he would hold, a celebration of their history that would weave together past and present. He yearned to share the stories that had awakened his spirit and fostered connections that had been lost for so long. On a vibrant spring afternoon, filled with the scents of blooming flowers, Marco transformed his living space into a testament to his findings. He placed photographs carefully along the walls, each picture a window into the past, while preparing food that represented their heritage. The inviting aroma filled the home, creating a warm atmosphere where laughter could flourish. As friends from the group home filtered in, Marco felt a rush of joy. This gathering was not simply a celebration of ancestry, but a chance for everyone to share their unique stories. Together, they could stitch a rich tapestry of experiences and create bonds that extended beyond mere survival. The kitchen buzzed with conversation, laughter cascading around them like music. Once they gathered around the table, Marco took a deep breath, filled with gratitude and excitement. He began to share what he had learned from his mother and grandmother, stories of courage that crossed the boundaries of time. He spoke of their endurance and determination against the odds, allowing the group to feel the weight of his family's spirit. As the story unfolded, Marco noticed how each person's eyes lit up, recognizing reflections of their own experiences in his tales. This was the beauty of sharing, realizing they were not alone in their struggles. Each voice added layers of richness to the evening. With every story that was shared, the feeling of community multiplied. It was more than just a gathering, it was a revival of hope. With the sun dipping low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Marco could feel the strength of connection embracing him. No longer an isolated boy fighting against the scars of his past, he had transformed into a young man rooted in the love and resilience that flowed through him. His heart swelled with gratitude, knowing these friendships were not bound by blood, but by shared tales of overcoming adversity. Later that evening, as the last guests departed, Marco stood in the softened glow of flickering candles, reflecting on a night filled with connection. He had glanced into the lives of his ancestors, glimpsing their hopes and dreams, and in return, shared his own. Each story told had woven new threads into the fabric of his life, establishing a family forged not just by history, but by the active love present in the room. As he gazed at the photos lining the wall, Marco understood that his journey was far from over. There were countless stories still unwritten, experiences still waiting to be shared. He would carry each word with him, honoring his family while living authentically in a world where he belonged. This new chapter, devoid of the chains of isolation, welcomed the future with wide open arms. Marco felt his grandmother and mother at his side, guiding him as he stepped into a life overflowing with love, connection, and boundless possibility. As spring's gentle warmth settled into the town, Marco felt an exhilaration that coursed through him, a ripple effect of love and connection that had blossomed after the gathering. With every sunrise, he awakened with renewed hope and determination to continue unraveling the intricate web of his family's past. However, one lingering question remained. What had truly led to his mother's absence, the silence that had echoed through his childhood? The more he thought about it, the more the urgency to confront this truth enveloped him. He recognized that despite the warmth of newfound connections, the ache of his unanswered questions still lingered, casting an invisible shadow over the light he had discovered. Marco could no longer ignore the whispered secrets of his family's history that guided him toward a confrontation he hadn't quite prepared for. One afternoon, emboldened by the love surrounding him, Marco returned to the attic where he had first discovered the journal. With a deep breath and steady hands, he rummaged through the boxes once more, hoping to unearth additional clues. As he sifted through old photographs and forgotten toys, something caught his eye. A small, dusty wooden box tucked away in a corner. Intrigued, he pulled it into the light. The box felt familiar, as if it carried the weight of countless stories yearning to be told. He pried it open, the hinges creaking in protest, and within found a myriad of items, notes, trinkets, and a stack of letters held together by a frayed ribbon. As he examined them, he realized they were correspondence between his mother and several other people. His heart raced. Perhaps these letters held the key to understanding her struggles, to uncovering the truths that had haunted him for so long. As he carefully unfolded the first letter, he was hit with a wave of emotion. The handwriting was elegant and fluid, revealing his mother's vulnerability as she opened up about her life, dreams, and fears. Each word painted a vivid picture of a young woman grappling with her circumstances, yearning for a life filled with love and acceptance. She wrote candidly about feeling lost, about the choices she made that had shaped her path, and how she longed for a place where she would finally belong. With each letter he read, Marco felt torn between the pain of understanding her reality and the love that blossomed in the acknowledgement of her strength. The letters unveiled not just the struggles she faced after his birth, but also the hope she harbored for him. He learned about the forced separation, details he had never known, the societal pressures and fears that led her to make heartbreaking decisions, the relationships she formed out of necessity, not comfort. One particular letter struck him profoundly. In it, his mother expressed her fierce love for him, a love that transcended their distance. She wrote about the moment she had to say goodbye, her heart heavy as she wished for opportunities that would remain just beyond her reach. Pinching the bridge of his nose, tears streamed down his cheeks as he absorbed her words, feeling the weight of the unconditional love she had for him, despite the choices she had made. In the quiet of the attic, the letters began to lift the fog of resentment that had clouded his heart for so long. The truth was harsher than he had pictured, yet it was also liberating. Marco could finally see his mother not as a ghost of his past, but as a flesh-and-blood woman who had fought battles he could hardly comprehend. He began to grasp that her absence had been a choice born out of love, a desperate desire to protect him from a life she felt ill-equipped to manage. Yet, with the emotional revelations came an undeniable need to confront the other pieces of this tangled puzzle. The letters mentioned several important people, a friend who had supported her through difficult times, and another individual who had brought both light and despair into her life. With each name, the urge to seek these people out grew stronger. He needed to understand how his mother had navigated her world, the paths that led her to choose silence over presence. Over the next few weeks, Marco reached out to those mentioned in the correspondence. One contact led him to a small cafe on the outskirts of town, where a woman named Clara remembered his mother well. With trepidation fluttering in his chest, he entered the cafe, scanned the cozy space, and finally spotted her. A woman whose welcoming smile bore echoes of kindness. Clara recognized him immediately, her eyes widening with warmth and surprise. The conversation unfolded, each moment a delicate dance of emotions. Marco shared the letters he had discovered, piecing together his mother's life through Clara's insights. Clara painted a vivid picture of the woman who had once dreamed of a bright future for herself and her child. Marco listened intently, feeling the threads of connection weaving tighter as Clara recounted memories filled with laughter, the shared dreams of raising children, and the heartbreaking decisions that would ultimately separate them. "I remember your mother's strength," Clara said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "But I also remember the pain of her longing. She cared for you deeply, Marco. It was never an easy choice." For the first time, Marco felt a sense of closure settling just beyond his reach. The woman he had envisioned for so long slowly took shape. In Clara's words, he found the missing pieces of a life he had been desperate to understand. He was no longer haunted by the questions he had held alone. Instead, he was embracing the truth of a flawed yet compassionate woman who wanted nothing more than to see her child flourish. Days turned into weeks as Marco pieced together more stories from Clara and others who had known his mother. With every conversation, he felt simultaneous grief and gratitude. Grief for the life he never had. Gratitude for the insight that reshaped his understanding of love and family. Through these connections, the whispers of his mother's legacy became clearer, and Marco began to transcend the role of a boy born into silence into one of purpose. It dawned on him that while the pain of her absence would always resonate, he had the power to transform that narrative. No longer a victim of circumstance, he could write a new chapter where love and understanding took precedence over resentment. With a resolute heart, Marco returned home. He gathered the letters, photographs, and memories, determined to create a chronicle of his family that would honor his mother's struggles and triumphs. He understood that true closure lay not in erasing the past, but in weaving together the threads of hurt and healing into something beautiful that reflected the journey of both his mother and himself. As he sat at his desk that evening, pen in hand, Marco began to write anew. As dawn broke over the town, casting soft warmth across Marco's room, he sat at his desk, surrounded by the remnants of his journey. The letters from his mother, the memories shared by Clara, and the photographs of relatives he was only beginning to know filled him with determination. He understood that to honor his mother, he needed to weave together these narratives into something meaningful, something that would not just reflect her struggles, but also celebrate the love that endured beyond her absence. With each stroke of the pen, Marco poured his heart onto the pages. He wrote about the dreams his mother had for him, the hope that flickered within her, even as she made choices that led to his separation. He encapsulated the love she felt, the letters filled with tenderness, and the sacrifices she made out of an overwhelming sense of responsibility. He crafted her life story not as a tragic tale of lost opportunities, but as a testament to resilience, illustrating the spirit of a woman who fought against the tides to keep him safe. He wanted the truth of her love to shine brightly, illuminating the shadows that had previously clouded his heart. As hours turned to days, Marco shared his writings with Clara, seeking her insights and memories that would help flesh out his narrative. She became a guiding light during this process, thrilling to see Marco's transformational journey. "What you're doing is important," she told him one afternoon, her eyes glistening with emotion. "You're giving voice to her story and your own. You're honoring her legacy, and in doing so, you are forging your own path." With Clara's encouragement, Marco began to flesh out a vision of sharing his project beyond the confines of his desk. He envisioned a community event, a gathering in the spirit of remembrance and connection, where he could invite those who had known his mother alongside friends from the group home. His desire to celebrate not merely the past, but to forge a brighter future, intertwined seamlessly with his growing confidence and sense of belonging. As he meticulously planned the event, Marco felt the excitement bubbling within him, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He reached out to the community space where he'd like to hold the gathering, secured a date, and began to think about how he could present his mother's story, while creating a welcoming atmosphere for everyone involved. As the day approached, Marco crafted a heartfelt invite, extending the opportunity not just to his friends and Clara, but to anyone moved by the journey of family and connection. He spent hours baking cookies and preparing vibrant decorations that would bring the space alive. He poured his spirit into every detail, imagining the warmth of hearts coming together to honor lives intertwined with love. On the day of the event, the sun blazed brightly, bathing the community center in golden light. As friends and acquaintances began to trickle in, Marco felt a swell of hope. Laughter echoed through the room, blending harmoniously with the aroma of baked goods. It was as if the air itself was charged with a sense of belonging and unity that he had long yearned for. At the center of the gathering, Marco set up a display filled with photographs, letters, and memories. He created a small area where people could write their own messages or stories on cards, sharing their thoughts and reflections, creating a tapestry enriched by countless voices. As people bonded over shared stories, joy filled the room, ebbing and flowing as laughter and memories intermingled, each anecdote enriching the very fabric of the gathering. When it was time for Marco to speak, he felt the weight of every heart in that room. Standing at the front, he glanced at the faces that had come to support him. Clara stood beside him, a proud and reassuring presence. He took a deep breath, opened his heart, and began recounting his mother's story. He spoke of her strength, the dreams that enveloped her, the love she had for him despite the choices that had led to their separation. As he shared the details of her life, he felt the burden of resentment lift, replaced by an overwhelming sense of compassion and understanding. Each word woven into the fabric of the gathering mirrored the strength of the community that enveloped him, the resonance of shared experiences binding them of the power of connection. His voice trembled as he spoke of the lessons he had learned on this journey. That love endures beyond the confines of absence. That stories can stitch together the wounds of solitude, and how our identities are shaped by the threads of those who came before us. As he concluded, Marco felt lighter, a weight that had long resided in his chest, dissipating like mist in the morning light. The room erupted in applause, the echoes bouncing off the walls with warmth. In that moment of unfiltered joy, Marco felt seen and heard, not just as a boy who had lost a mother, but as a young man who had risen from the ashes to celebrate life with others who understood the complexities of love and loss. As conversations resumed, Marco felt a gentle hand on his shoulder. It was Clara, her voice soft yet filled with conviction. "You've done something remarkable today. Your mother would be proud." Days turned into weeks, but the spirit of that gathering lingered long after it concluded. Marco remained committed to honoring his mother's legacy, nurturing the connections he'd forged with the community as he continued to share their stories. Through the letters and the memories collected, he recognized that each time he shared his journey, he not only celebrated his mother's life, but also solidified his own path, one rooted in love, resilience, and hope. He found solace not only in the pursuit of understanding his past, but in the embrace of friendships that reminded him that family transcends bloodlines. One quiet evening, he sat at his writing desk reflecting on the journey he had taken. With trembling hands, he penned a letter to his mother, one final tribute, expressing gratitude for the lessons she had imparted. In that moment of vulnerability, he was no longer an orphan cloaked in grief. He had become a beacon of compassion, carrying forward the legacy of love that had been bestowed upon him. "Thank you for everything. I've learned to see the light through the darkness, and I promise to honor your memory in every step I take. You will never be forgotten." With those words, Marco knew he was stepping into a new chapter, a future alive with possibility, reminding himself that sometimes all a child really needs is to be heard. A lesson he vowed to pass on to others, illuminating their paths with the words and love he carried in his heart. Thank you for journeying with Marco. Sometimes all a child needs is to be heard. As the months slipped by, Marco embraced his new life with renewed purpose. Each day brimmed with potential as he honored his mother's memory and forged deeper connections within his community. The experience of sharing his journey had lit a fire within him, igniting a desire to help others find their voices, just as he had. One afternoon, while browsing the library stacks, Marco discovered a flyer for a writing workshop titled "Share Your Story." The title resonated within him, calling forth memories of his own journey. Without hesitation, he signed up, eager to find a space where stories could flourish. When the workshop began, Marco entered a room filled with individuals eager to share their lives. Each participant held stories of triumph, sorrow, and resilience, and the energy of the gathering felt palpable as Alina, the facilitator, welcomed everyone. "Here, we're not just writing, we're connecting," she said, her warmth enveloping the room like a comforting embrace. As people began to share their pieces, Marco listened intently. Each story revealed a glimpse of the soul, drawing him deeper into the tapestry of human experience. He felt a sense of kinship with them as they all navigated the complexities of love and loss. When it was finally his turn, he took a deep breath and shared his story, of longing and growth. "To heal is to remember," he told them, recounting how the letters from his mother had become a lifeline. The room fell silent, faces softening as they connected with his vulnerability. Marco realized that by sharing his truth, he was creating a bridge, not just for himself, but for all of them. The applause that followed felt like a shared breath, affirming the bond they now held. After the initial workshop ended, participants lingered, exchanging thoughts and stories. The sense of support inspired Marco, and he took the next step to organize monthly meetups to encourage continued storytelling. At these gatherings, laughter and tears mingled, with each person rising to share their stories of heartache and healing. One particular evening, a newcomer named Lila joined the group. She seemed shy, her eyes reflecting hidden pain. Marco noticed her hesitation and gently encouraged her to share. After some time, she opened up about losing her brother, her voice quivering with emotion. The collective compassion in the room surrounded her like a warm blanket, and Marco's heart ached for her. He recognized the familiar weight of grief she carried. In the days that followed, Marco worked closely with Lila, helping her navigate her feelings and transform her grief into writing. He recounted his own journey, emphasizing the power of vulnerability. As Lila began to find her voice, Marco saw her spirit brighten. She transformed her sorrow into words, each sentence a testament to her love for her brother. As the months progressed and Lila's story flourished, Marco began to envision a bigger project, an anthology that would capture the myriad voices within their community. This book would not only showcase individual narratives, but the shared experience of resilience. He felt a powerful urge to preserve these stories, alerting the world that each voice mattered. With the group's enthusiasm behind him, they eagerly began submitting pieces to the anthology. Marco dedicated hours to editing the stories, ensuring that every voice resonated authentically and beautifully. The creative process deepened the connections within their community as they celebrated their collective journeys and the bonds formed along the way. The completion of the anthology inspired them to plan a launch event, a night to celebrate their work and the courage it took to share their stories. They adorned the community center with photographs and bright decorations, each piece reflecting the voices of those who contributed. The anticipation hung thick in the air as the launch day approached, promising to be a night of joy and camaraderie. When the day arrived, the room was filled with friends, family, and newcomers eager to support. Marco stood amidst the celebration, witnessing the gathering of so many brave souls uniting for a shared purpose. Each person exuded a sense of pride as they mingled, their laughter bouncing off the walls, filling the space with warmth. As the event unfolded, Marco took the podium, the faces in front of him glowing with anticipation. "Tonight, we celebrate not just a book but the courage it takes to share our stories," he began, his voice steady. He highlighted the power that comes from storytelling, the ability to connect, heal, and uplift. It was a reminder that no one was alone in their struggles. Together, they formed a powerful community. When the applause erupted after his speech, Marco felt a rush of gratitude flood through him. This was the culmination of his journey, not just as an individual, but as part of something greater. The warmth of acceptance and love enveloped him, and he knew then that they had created something beautiful together. As conversations resumed, stories continued to flow. The energy in the room shifted to one of pure celebration. Each person highlighted the importance of community and support. Marco looked at Lila, who radiated confidence and joy, her journey blossoming before his eyes. Together, they had transformed pain into power. In that moment, Marco realized what he had truly achieved, a space where stories could be shared freely and connections could flourish. Their community had not only embraced their narratives, but had also cultivated an environment where healing was possible. He understood now that sometimes all a child needs is to be heard. And as they continued to celebrate that night, Marco witnessed the richness of human experience, weaving a tapestry of resilience and hope for everyone involved. In embracing their shared journeys, they illuminated paths of healing, one story at a time. Thank you for joining Marco and his community on this transformative journey. Each voice added to the collective experience, reminds us that we are never truly alone. As the excitement surrounding the anthology's launch began to settle, Marco found himself reflecting on the profound impact of their shared stories. The community he had nurtured felt like a family, one bound together by resilience and understanding. Each individual's narrative contributed to a larger tapestry, reminding everyone that vulnerability could pave the way for healing. In the weeks that followed, feedback about the book poured in. Readers shared how the stories resonated with their own struggles, inspiring them to seek their voices. Marco felt a rush of fulfillment, knowing they had spurred conversations that mattered deeply. This newfound passion for storytelling lit a fire in him, and he recognized an opportunity to take their message further. One sunny afternoon, Marco received a call from a local radio station interested in inviting him for an interview about the anthology. The prospect of speaking on air excited and terrified him in equal measure. Still, he saw this as a chance to share their journey with an even wider audience and inspire others to explore their stories. When the interview day arrived, Marco sat nervously in the studio, facing a microphone. The host greeted him with enthusiasm, and they dove into a discussion about the anthology, the personal journeys behind the stories, and the importance of sharing experiences. Marco spoke earnestly about his own path and how storytelling could create connections, heal wounds, and foster a sense of belonging. During the discussion, he felt a sense of empowerment. The words flowed seamlessly as he described the heart of the project and how it had brought together different voices for a common purpose. "We are all connected through our experiences," he asserted passionately. "When we share our stories, we illuminate the paths for others." After the interview aired, a flood of responses came through social media and community forums. People shared their reflections, heartfelt stories, and thank you notes expressing how Marco's words had resonated with them. He felt uplifted, recognizing the ripple effect of their shared experiences, reaching far beyond the bounds of their immediate community. Encouraged by the response, Marco and Lila brainstormed ideas for workshops centered around storytelling. They envisioned a series of sessions that would empower individuals to explore their emotions through writing, nurturing a supportive environment for people to share their narratives without fear of judgment. The goal was to help transform their pain into power. On the first night of the workshop, participants filled the room with both excitement and apprehension. Marco welcomed everyone, emphasizing the importance of sharing in a safe space. "You can express anything here," he reassured them. "Tonight is about self-exploration and connection." As the workshop progressed, Marco guided participants through writing exercises meant to delve into their emotional landscapes. Through prompts and sharing circles, individuals began to unravel their stories, revealing layers of hurt, resilience, and hope. Marco watched in awe as participants reached deep within themselves, each unveiling their truth. He could feel their anxiety morphing into a sense of camaraderie, and with each shared story, their connections strengthened. Among them, Lila stood tall, embodying her growth. She shared insights from her heartbreaking journey, eloquently articulating her feelings about loss and hope. Marco felt a sense of pride in witnessing her transformation. Her courage breathed life into the room, emboldening others to share their vulnerabilities too. By the end of the evening, tears mingled with laughter as connections blossomed and new stories unfolded, proving that healing was indeed possible in the collective spirit of storytelling. Marco realized that they weren't just hosting workshops, they were creating a movement. In the following weeks, the workshops gained momentum, evolving into a beloved space for self-expression and understanding. Participants began forming deeper bonds. As stories flowed, so did healing. Marco understood that the journey was not only about sharing their narratives, but also about cultivating a resilient community that celebrated each other's experiences. As he reflected on this journey, Marco knew their work had just begun. By encouraging each individual to own their story, they opened the door to deeper connections and compassionate understanding. Together, they were not only telling tales, they were embodying the essence of hope and healing. Thank you for being a part of Marco's journey. Each shared story adds to the strength of our community, reminding us of the profound impact we can have on one another when we choose to be heard.